Here is Noodler's Purple. Let's jump straight to the end with my opinion on this ink. A nice dark purple that doesn't lean anywhere from purple, as can be seen in the chromatography and in the ink swatch. There's very little color variation as you change pen or paper, though it is there. There is a little bit of shading that can be that can be hard to find when it is present. Now, on non-fountain pen friendly paper, it keeps a solid, well-behaved performance and stays a purple, even though it does have a little bit of a tone shift that happens. Often overlooked is standard color names like this, and my experience is they're often some of the very best, like this one. The pen for today is a Visconti Van Gogh self-portrait with a medium nib. Now that we know my opinion on this ink, let's see how I got there with the first writing sample done on Clairfontaine. We get a very nice clean purple that's down here, and again, there's no lean that happens in any kind of direction. We get no feather, we get no spread, we get almost nothing for shading. Now I say almost because if you really go looking for a slightly darker letter within a word, you may find it, but for the most part, we're really not seeing any kind of shading here, so I'm gonna say it's doing really well. Looking at the back of the page, between the wiggling fingers, we get no bleeding and no ghosting. Let's take a look at some other inks from the same manufacturer. Here is Noodler's Army. Here is Noodler's Beaver. Here is Noodler's Cayenne. Here is Noodler's Upper Ganges Blue. The next writing sample is done in a Portage reporter's notebook. We get the same tone as the Clairfontaine. We get no feather and no spread, though it rarely happens with this paper. No shading at all, and it's a more absorbent paper, but it hasn't changed anything about this ink in any way. It's really doing an amazing job. Looking at the back of the page, between the wiggling fingers, we get no bleeding, no ghosting, and can easily continue our notes back here. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is immediately put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. The one on the right, marked with a D, is let dry for 10 minutes before putting into water. The next writing sample is done on a national brand Steno notebook. We have a slight bit of tone shift that does happen on this paper. It gets a little bit lighter and a little bit of a different kind of purple about what we're seeing. Now, if you were not seeing these side by side, then you wouldn't notice it. It's one of the reasons that I don't even bother putting that sort of thing on camera. I see no feathering, I see no spread, I see no shading, just really good performance. Looking at the back of the page, we see this ink gets very deep into this paper. Nothing bled through touching the page underneath, but the ghosting is very heavy. I do not think you could take notes on the back of the page. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. The highlighter is on the top left, pen flush is on the top right, 1/3 bleach solution is on the bottom left, and water is on the bottom right. The next writing sample is done in a Rhodia notebook. As you would expect, this stands out against the quad rule with no problem whatsoever. Really, I'd be surprised if a purple this dark, not that it's super dark, ever had a problem with the quad rule. It's the same tone that we get on the Clairfontaine. It doesn't feather, it doesn't spread, it doesn't shade, it's just a great purple on the page. Looking at the back of the page, we get no bleeding and no ghosting. With over 1,000 inks reviewed, let's take a look at some color comparables. Here is Noodler's Purple Dream. Here is Noodler's Purple Martin. Here is Noodler's Purple Wampum.
Here is Noodler's Tchaikovsky.
The next writing sample is done in a composition lab notebook. We get a tone that is a little lighter and a little flatter than it was on the Clairfontaine. Still a very nice purple on the page though, standing out against the quad rule with no problem. It doesn't feather, doesn't spread, doesn't shade, just does an excellent job. Really, it looks so good. I almost always happy with these really basic named inks. Looking at the back of the page, between the wiggling fingers, we get no bleeding and no ghosting. While it's nice to see ink in the same color family, I prefer to see ink to complement the color on the page.
Here is Noodler's L. Lawrence. Here is Pen BBS number 261. Here is Pilot 100th Anniversary Pink. Here is Califolio Bouton d'Or.
The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. We do get a little bit of a shift in the tone. It gets a little bit lighter, quite a bit flatter than what we had. Yes, we do get feathering, and yes, we do get spread. I don't think the feathering or the spread are particularly out of control. If you wanted to use it, I think you could just write quicker to try and cut down on any kind of feathering that happens. Dear me, lots of feathering right up there in that first line. Looking at the back of the page, between the wiggling fingers, we get lots of ghosting. You can't write back here, not at all, but none of it bled through touching the page underneath. So what nib and pen do I think are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? The medium flow, medium nib of this Visconti Van Gogh really shows off the full beauty of this ink. Off camera, I did try it in a wet medium and a dry fine, and while there was some tone variation, it wasn't really that much. Yet, I really liked the feel of the medium flow, medium nib that it gave, the way it looked, the way it made me feel looking at the writing. It really gave the best showcase for the color across all of the papers that are used. So I'm going to say go with that medium flow, medium nib. I hope you got something out of this video, and thanks for watching. I want to let you know that the best way you can support this or any channel is to let retailers know where you heard of something if you go to buy.